Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context College Football. I'm your host, Dylan Rubenking. I am joined by my good friend Dan Keegan, who is joining us for the first time on the podcast in quite some time. So, Dan, how does it feel to be back on the tube here?
Feels fantastic. Got my my microphone on, my air conditioner cranking. It's 95% humidity here in New York City every day. So we're going to stay inside with the air conditioner on and talk college football.
Oh man, I went for a walk earlier in like dress clothes and I was just dying. So I can imagine that it's probably a little bit cooler here in Washington than it is there for you in New York. So it's the dead months of summer, but we have some Pac-12 or not Pac-12. We got some conference media days stuff coming up. Big 12 was last week, I believe. SEC this week. Pac-12 will be this weekend. So a little bit of stuff going on there. But I'm curious with you, Dan. You seems like you've been keeping up with it a little bit. The topic of media days itself, it seems like the media days are shrinking a little bit because I know Pac-12 I think is only one day. Big 12 I think was two. SEC obviously a little bit more grand. But I'm
It
curious
just means
where
more.
it just means more. That's exactly right. Not sponsored by the SEC. But I'm curious about your thoughts about media days and does it feel like we're getting enough from teams, enough coverage of every team in the conference that we've seen so far?
What do you mean by that? Are we getting enough coverage?
Does it feel like media days are shrinking, I suppose?
Oh, honestly, if they do, it's fine. That's fine. In terms of the national scene, media days is such a waste of time.
Sure.
It's a really good opportunity to get the beats together and have, get a little cross pollination of the Missouri beat writers get to talk to the LSU guys and things like that, and swap ideas, swap names to watch, and makes everybody's local coverage better. But in terms of the national talking season, it's just a lot of bloat. A lot of that. What was the ESPN thing yesterday? Will Nick Saban need to make a playoff or he'll tarnish his legacy if
Oh
he doesn't?
yeah.
Come on, get out of here. Another opportunity for Jimbo Fisher to say something silly in front of the media, like going on about, filibustering about not the play calling. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Petrino? And come on, man. I don't know. It's just there's a good stuff that comes out for the local beats for the Texas A&M reporters to talk about, guys that flashed in the spring and that some position battles are shaking out. But the other stuff, it's just a waste of time on the national scene. It is a
It
good
feels
landmark,
like
though. It's like a milestone. Hey, we're talking season. Fall camp starts in 2 weeks. We're almost home.
it feels like it's a chance for head coaches to blow off some hot air to the reporters and to the nation about whatever their
Sure.
heart desires, whatever the reporters want them to talk about. It's always fun. It's entertaining. Like you said, it's a milestone. Hey, we're getting close to college football, but we're not quite there yet. But of course, the anticipation builds as each head coach steps up to the podium. So, any takeaways so far from, I guess, SEC this week? That's the hot topic on the market. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up about SEC so far?
I mean, like I said, as a Missouri fan, lots of some interesting things on the position battlefront. I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of that, but for me, like Drinkwitz playing it cool. He's always gone up there and put his foot in his mouth, said something silly. He has a knack for getting himself taken out of context.
Sure.
Pretty a couple times a year, so he kept it clean. But I did think it was really interesting. He was asked about play calling, and he is not. He was brought in from App State as this he's a quarterback guru. He's got this offense, lots of eye candy, and but he got up there and said, "My offense isn't working. This is Kirby Moore, the new coordinator from Fresno State. He said this is Kirby Moore's offense. He's calling the plays. I didn't do a good enough job." And I think that's fascinating. And then, like I said, with Jimbo, the opposite, kind of dodging the question a little bit, and I think that's going to be a theme of this whole season. In fact, there's a lot of different coaches bringing in some offensive coordinators to try to save their job. You look around the sport. I mean, the vibes are great in South Carolina, of course, but they, oh man, I'm drawing a blank on the guy that they ran off that the fan base hated. He's at Nebraska now, and they got Dowell Loggins. Why am I drawing a blank on that guy's name? They hated him.
I can't remember either.
That's embarrassing. Google it while I talk about all the different. You got
I'm on it.
Old, Ricky Ronnie bringing in Kevin Decker to run the veer and shoot from Fordham. You have, of course, at the other end of the sport, you got Garrett Riley at Clemson, looking to kind of take over an offense that had stalled out a little bit. You got Cal bringing back Jake Spavital, the Bear Raid. You got all kind. Oh, Liam Cohen coming back to Kentucky. So a lot of, and of course, Tommy Rees at Alabama. They had to make a change, and maybe that wasn't the best hire. Some people are questioning that move, but throughout the sport, Miami, right? Dawson, Shannon Dawson from Houston, from the Holgerson tree. So a lot of guys around the sport are making changes, kind of feeling that pressure. Jimbo's the only one that won't admit it, though. Everybody else is kind of like, hey, we got to turn the page.
Marcus Satterfield was the guy that you were talking about.
Yes, Marcus Satterfield.
Yeah.
They hated him.
Yeah. Well, we know Nebraska fans aren't as loving of coaches sometimes if things go sour or pear-shaped, as Australians will say.
They're all ready to buy in. They're all ready to buy in right now. So
we're at that stage. There's a cycle with Nebraska fans. We're at the stage where, it's buy-in, we're going to a bowl game, things will be better, and then in a couple months it'll be like fire everybody. So yeah, it's happy season for Nebraska fans. But one thing I was really curious to see with SEC Media Days was kind of the follow-up from Clark Lee, what he said last year about Vanderbilt, about how, some point we'll be the best team, best program in the country. Everybody thought he was, just trying to build some hype for Vanderbilt. And I don't blame him. I mean, you have to have confidence in your program. But the thing that he said is like, we don't want to be celebrated for going 5-7 last year. And for Vanderbilt standards, they looked better on paper. Obviously, they got smacked by some of the better teams in the conference, but they looked more competent. I mean, beating Florida and Kentucky in back-to-back weeks, that is just not something that Vanderbilt's been able to do in the last few years. So, and really winning SEC games hasn't been something they've been able to do in the last couple of years. So, I think he wants to set the standard that, 5-7 may be good for the last couple of years, but it's not good for the program we want to build. And I was really impressed by how he followed up the whole, we're going to be the best program in the country at some point. He said, that's not what we're in for. We're not doing this whole program rebuild to go 5-7 and be happy about that. We're not satisfied with that. And obviously it's going to take a while. He knew that. Everybody knew that, to get to a respectable place in the SEC alone, not even just nationally. But I like where they're going. I'm curious to see what their plan is offensively with AJ Swan at quarterback now, because Mike Wright was a little bit different. He had the athleticism. You could run him. Now he's off to Mississippi State. So I'm curious to see how AJ Swan does as the main guy at starting quarterback. But I really like the team that they've got. Lost a couple pieces on defense that'll hurt. But overall, I think this is a team that could be, could keep being competitive. I don't know about a bowl team just yet.
Yeah, I agree. And that was always a cheap shot in terms of like laughing at Clark Lee for it. It's like, obviously, like, he knows they're not going to turn into, prime Bear Bryant, Alabama. Like, he knows he's not going to do that. Like, he has perspective, but still, like, Bryce Harper used to say, if people aren't laughing at your goals, they're not big enough. That was the thing he said. It's like, yeah, like, why take the Vanderbilt job if you don't want to make it the best team in the country? That's the whole point of being a great coach like that. Anyway, I always thought that was a cheap shot to laugh at that.
Yeah, and because it was Vanderbilt. I mean, if it was like, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, or, even Drinkwitz at Missouri, I don't feel like people would really laugh, because they're a lot closer, and Vanderbilt's been the brunt of the joke for a long time. And I don't think that they're a laughing stock anymore, but I definitely wouldn't say that, oh, this is a team to watch out for. Maybe they could pull off an upset that they usually wouldn't, but I think that they're on the right trajectory for once. And that's, if you're a Vanderbilt fan, I guess it's a good time to feel good to be a Vanderbilt fan. You got the right guy who wants the best for your program. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, my light just died like 10 minutes into the show. So that's too bad, but we roll on. So anything else from SEC Media Days that jumped out at you? I know Hugh Freeze was talking a little bit about the dual quarterback system potentially. Was that something that caught your eye? And, Lane Kiffin with Ole Miss quarterbacks as well?
No, I haven't yet done a deep dive into what was going on today. Kind of busy at the day job earlier, but No, we'll see what happens rest of the day. Obviously, when Saban gets up, there'll be, all kinds of hubbub and stir and is your legacy tarnished, sir? And all kinds of good stuff like that. But
The rat
we'll see.
poison, if you
Oh
will.
gosh, the rat poison.
Have the 2023 season counter rat poison 1. But yeah, man, it's fun that we're back in media days. I always get a kick out of SEC, particularly because it feels like the beat reporters are a little bit more aggressive with their questions, because it just means more, like we've said. But I love the questions at SEC Media Days. It's always all over no context college football. It's always a treat to just watch journalists go to depths that other conference reporters don't go to. And I really appreciate that. Like
Well, it's
asking Lane Kiffin about like his playlists and his favorite movies and things like that.
sure it's such a fascinating blend. Like this year, you have, you always have like the local radio guys that are like, "Are you gonna win the? Are you gonna be the best team of all time this year, sir?" Like, and then you have that kind of right fluff. I remember last year people asked Mike Leach for Netflix recommendations, and he rattled
That's
off a
right.
bunch of shows and things like that. But uh, so, and then you also have the beats, doing their job, asking sharp questions about lineups and big games and things like that. But you've also got some pretty sharp guys that go in there. Clark Books, SEC Statcat, he's down there this week. Colin Wilson, Action Network, sharp guys that are doing good stuff in the analytics space and schematic space, like Brooks. So get some really really interesting missed questions.
Absolutely. We love media days. And before we jump into the heart of the podcast episode, what you probably clicked on to talk about the group of 5 New Year's 6 contenders, we wanted to give a shout out to our friends at Home Field Apparel. They're a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They're committed to creating incredibly unique and fun, comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They've got a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including your favorite teams. They just recently added Oregon last week, and this week they added a new Illinois State tee to the collection, celebrating 100 years of the Redbird, which is really cool. And then on Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, they will drop some new collections for UConn, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse for all you old Big East fans out there. So, they dive deep into the archives and history of every school, unique logos, mascots, iconic moments, milestones. In the case of Illinois State, they create thoughtfully designed apparel that you can't find anywhere else. So, Dan, I know you've been a big fan of Home Field Apparel. You've been rocking them for quite some time. Tell the folks at home what you like about their stuff and what they can expect when they shop there.
Oh yeah, home field's the best. The shirts are stunningly comfortable, fantastic. I have about 19 or 20 of them. I have almost the entire Missouri collection, of course. I grew up in DC, got a couple Terps collections. Sister went to JMU, so I have for them. So I got a couple Duke shirts, got a Tulane shirt, why not? Got the Boise State Statue of Liberty, like just rocking all sorts of cool college sports logos. You got to get Youngstown State Penguins. I mean, come on, can't beat that. Colorado School of Mines. It's great. I just love the selection. I love just looking at some of the random old logos and being like, yeah, I should buy that. I don't need it, but I should buy it. And you can use our code if you're a first time buyer. Our code Portal get you 15% off your order, and you can use that savings. Dylan, tell them what you can do with that savings.
Absolutely. Well, if you're like me, you can get some Oregon stuff. You can get some Kansas stuff. I support Kansas. I know you don't as
No,
much on
I'm
the
logging
on the
off.
Missouri on the Missouri side of things, but you can check them out at homefieldapparel.com. We'll have a custom link in our description for you to check out. You can use that to get your 15% off with the code Portal, as Mr. Keegan said. Like we said, 150 colleges and growing. Their online shop is so convenient, so easy to navigate, especially with the season coming up so super close. So shout out to our friends at Homefield. Go check them out. They're a lot of fun. So with some of those teams that are on their website, group of 5 teams, a lot of love for them. We want to jump into the group of 5. our friend Liam Blutman at No Context College Football had a article this week talking about some of the New Year's Six contenders coming out of the group of five. He's a big group of five guy, as we all know. It's been giving him a lot of love all week long. So we wanted to do our justice and talk about some of the teams that we think have a good chance at going to the New Year's Six in the last year of this kind of setup where one team gets in an automatic bid. So Dan, I know I have a feeling where you're going to start here, but we're going to start with the Sun Belt because I know we just want to get the exciting stuff and we'll work our way back. So tell me
That's
about the
right.
Sun Belt. Who do you think can make it out?
As a forefront Sun Belt enjoyer, I think there are a couple teams that could crash the New York Six. I don't think that they're necessarily the favors to do so because the American pretty consistently takes that spot, and especially with UTSA joining the league, Memphis looking like they might be right for a bounce back. There's going to be a couple of contenders from that league, and they're obviously the favorite to do so. Usually that conference. But I think South Alabama is a contender. Just loads of returning talent on both sides of the ball. Returning quarterback Carter Bradley, playmakers at receiver, LaDamian Webb in the backfield. That offense is going to be sturdy. They do have a few pieces they need to replace up front in the line, but offense is going to be good. Again, Major Applewhite, you may remember him as the OC. The defense is fast, athletic, and physical. Yam Banks leading it from the back. That's going to be a really, really good defense again. And I think that's a team prepared to make a leap. They have a tough schedule. They do play at Oklahoma State, and they draw, I believe, both James Madison and Coastal Carolina from the East. So that's a little tough. But if they can get through that, those are going to be some really, really, really good wins. They get to 11-1, maybe even 12-0. You're talking knocking off Troy, James Madison, Oklahoma State, and then Coastal, and then whoever comes from the East. You're looking at a really strong slate of wins. So I think South Alabama has the potential to put together that kind of resume. I think Troy, of course, fantastic defense like last year. Offense, not so great. A lot of complimentary football is what I'll say about that offense. And then a bunch of teams in the East, I think, have potential to go like 10-2. I really do. Obviously, James Madison does, but they're not going to be eligible. Marshall's going to have the best G5 defense probably this year again. Again, complimentary football on the offensive side. Rasheen Ali is a star, but not much going on there in the receiving core. And then Coastal Carolina, as long as Grayson McCall's there, I still think they have a chance for a great season. Defense is a little generous, we'll say, to opposing offenses. But so all these teams in the Sun Belt could do it, could be the best G5 team. But what scares me as a Sun Belt enjoyer is that they haven't earned that recognition just yet. So like a win over Marshall by South Alabama, by an 11-1 South Alabama, like they beat them in the title game, will be incredibly impressive. That's a great defense. But I don't think it's seen that way by the committee, the bowl makers, the national scene. They're looking at that American as kind of the standard bearer and not realizing how impressive those wins are in that league. Does that make sense? I think that when you look at the teams that do, obviously when Cincinnati crashed the playoff, you have to kind of do it the year before to do it the next year. So I think, so my overarching point here is there's going to be some fantastic group of five football played in the Sun Belt, but these teams don't necessarily have that reputation. Maybe Troy from their last year season, and then maybe Coastal with McCall. But Memphis, Boise State, Tulane, they're kind of going to get the benefit of the doubt. UTSA as an American team, they're going to kind of get the benefit of the doubt from the bowl committee for being, they're there. They're the teams that are there. These are the ones that play at this level.
Yeah, I think they call it the Power Six, including the American. So that's definitely, which I don't believe in. Yeah, I know some fans do.
I would have entertained that before. They did put a team in the playoff, but not with Cincy, Houston, UCF.
Yeah, well, maybe not now, but historically.
Rice isn't making you a power.
No, or North Texas at this point. If North Texas came last year, I'd say, yeah, I'm not as high on them this year, but we can get into the American a little bit. But for clarification, so I don't believe South Alabama plays Coastal Carolina this year, if my schedule on our magazine is correct, but they do play at Tulane week 1. So that'll be a good test, group of 5 test at the
Who's
start of the
South
year.
Al's crossover? I know they play two. I know they play JMU.
That's
Because
right.
JMU, I'm high on the Dukes, but they do switch out. Last year they got to play Arkansas State and Texas State from the West. This year they have to play South Alabama and Troy. That is no joke. So
I believe it's
I'm looking at their
Marshall and
crossover.
JMU.
Okay, yeah. So those are both teams that are at the top. So
That's right. Yeah. So South Alabama, like you said,
they
returning
got some.
production everywhere. And in my mind, I was really disappointed that they didn't get to the championship game last year. Very competitive team, solid offense, really good offense for the Sun Belt standards. Like you said, there's some complementary offenses at the top of the Sun Belt, but defensively, they were really solid as well. One of the better defenses in the Sun Belt, in return, a lot of that production as well. But to me, I think this has to be the year for Coastal. I just feel like it has to be. It's Grayson McCall's last, the encore, as Liam put it in his preview magazine article. Um, I am worried about that defense, though. I'm quite worried about that defense, but I don't think there are a lot of teams on their schedule where they could be in a shootout. I feel like Georgia Southern would probably be one. I think App State is another one. Georgia State, I'm kind of back and forth on how their offense could look because they lose arguably their 2 best running backs in program history. Um, but I still like the upside of that Georgia State team. They get UCLA week 1 on the road, at Army as well, Marshall, James Madison. I mean, they got a tough schedule this year, but offensively, I think they're as good as anybody in the Sun Belt. Defensively, I think they probably took an even further step back. Josiah Stewart was a huge, huge loss. They didn't have much of a pass rush outside of him. So I'm a little bit worried that his loss will be massive for that defensive line. But offensively, I think they could kind of pull off sort of a Pac-12 Mountain West kind of vibe where their offense just carries the day and the defense is good enough to do the job, but I'm sure it'll lose them a couple games. Troy, I'm not as high on them as I was last year. They still have a lot of pieces that I really like, but offensively, I'm going to need to see a lot more. And I think Kamani Vidal at running back is a promising piece, but the passing offense, you lose Tez Johnson, your leading receiver. I don't really like the options that they have in the passing game. So I feel like Vidal's going to have a monster year for them to get there again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really do like Coastal slate. You start with UCLA. They Chips teams kind of, take September off typically. So they get a few close wins and then sneak in. But you can go out there week 1, steal that win. Bam, you got your hallmark win. You need one of those, right? You needed, Cincy needed that win over Notre Dame and that the year they made it. And we're not even talking playoff. We're just talking G5 here.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm really worried about that Coastal defense. It was atrocious last year. It truly cratered. They were pretty good the first couple years with Chad Staggs running that defense for Chadwell, and it just fell apart. The back end was one of the worst secondaries in all of college football, and I'm not sure where the names are there to get it better. Maybe just new voices, new ideas, new blood can kind of turn it around. Kind of a dead cat bounce kind of scenario. So maybe, this is not going to turn into the defenses that you see in this league, like that Marshall and Troy can field. It's not even going to look like the teams like that James Madison and South Al can field that are 30-ish, 40-ish in SP plus. This is still going to be the question is, are they going to be like 75th in SP plus, or are they going to be 100 and 18th? So.
Yeah.
They have more skill position talent on that Coastal offense than I think any G5 team. They go 3 deep at receiver. They go 3 deep at running back. They're loaded with playmakers, and even if it's not the pure Chadwell scheme and he's not calling the plays, they're still going to be funky. They're still going to get the ball in space to these guys. And McCall is, great point guard to get the ball to these guys, to Reese White, CJ Beasley, Pinckney, etc. So they're going to score a lot of points.
Yeah. Jared Brown, yo. Keep Jared Brown's name in your head because that guy is very, very talented. I know Pinckney was kind of the forefront of the passing offense, but Jared Brown had a phenomenal freshman year. I think he's going to be a star. If Liam was on here, he'd probably talk to you for 20 minutes about Jared Brown. So I'm very excited. And obviously, you have to mention Grayson McCall as an icon at quarterback. They're doing some more like under center stuff, doing some more over the middle stuff. And obviously they'll still feature some of the Chadwell offense for sure. But first year coaching staff, you know, I think if Chadwell was coming back, if he stuck around with that coaching staff, I'd feel even better about their chances to make it into the group of five. But I still like the personnel that they've got and coaching staff. I really like Trickett. I really like his philosophy. I like his fit. And I think Tim Beck is a good mind as well for McCall for his last year. So
And
I'm confident.
what I was talking about with JMU, it's the opposite for Coastal. They're the ones this year that gets Texas State and Arkansas State. You want to draw them. You don't want to draw, Troy and South Al or Troy and Louisiana from the West. You want those bottom feeders there. So no offense, sorry. I think Texas State's going to be interesting, but we'll see. They're interesting, but they're not part of this conversation that we're having today. So, and then that James Madison game to end the year is going to be incredible. Coastal was pretty hot about that whole Kings of the East thing, and they're gonna want some revenge. So,
well, maybe they shouldn't have got wiped by what was it, 40 at the end of the year? It was like 47-7.
7. I was there. I was in the stands at Bridgeforth, and
yeah, that game was nasty.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Coastal, man, I'm really upset. I know a lot of our Sunbelt fans will be upset. I know you're upset about JMU not being able to compete because that is a very good team. I liked them a lot last year. Lose some big pieces on offense. So I'm curious how the offense looks, but the defense is going to be really good. But they're still going to be competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished first in their division, but obviously that doesn't really mean anything this year. So until next year.
They can still make a bowl if there are not enough teams. A 6+ win James Madison team as a second year FCS would get the nod over a 5-win APR score team, which is normally how they fill the bowl slots. So James Madison fans just got to be rooting for all those borderline teams to lose out. So you got a whole swath of 5 and 7 teams, and you can sneak in. But yeah, I mean, Kurt Cinetti works wonders with quarterbacks. So if he does, like, nobody saw that coming from Todd Centeio. I mean, he was a dime a dozen guy for 5 years, and suddenly he gets to Kurt Cinetti's tutelage, and he's offensive player of the year. So that offensive line returns all 5 guys and they've played together for 2 years. So this is their third year together, this batch. They're going to be mean up front. They got a good backfield. I think it'd be really good. They do have, it's the hardest schedule in school history, right? Last year they only played 11 games. This year they have 12 FBS games. They have Virginia. They go to Utah State, a weird one. So it's basically the hardest schedule that the school has ever played. So it'd be interesting to see how they navigate that.
As it should be. It'll be a nice kind of transition to postseason play eligibility next year in a normal world. Obviously there is a scenario where they could get in, but in a normal world next year
I do want to see, just for the storyline, like, I want to see them go 8-4, there are enough teams, and then they make a bowl. That'd be nice. It would be really cool storyline wise, just for the coverage, the gnashing of teeth, and the rending of garments. If they go like 12-0, they go 11-1, and they are the best team in the East again. And because the Sun Belt, they're not technically like rules eliminated from playing in the Sun Belt Championship. The Sun Belt just didn't let them play because they didn't want a conference title winner that couldn't play in a bowl. So they're ineligible from a bowl, but they're not ineligible technically from winning the Sun Belt. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
I want them to go 11-1, 12-0, and like make people make tough decisions. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think they could win those 2 road non-conference games at Virginia. I'm not liking Virginia at all. And at Utah State, I think will be better than last year, but I still think that's a winnable game for James Madison.
I think they might be favored against Virginia.
You might be right. That Virginia team is not good.
That roster is bleak.
All right, so jumping into the Mountain West now, I'm really fascinated by this conference. I'm always fascinated by this conference, but I think the obvious choice here would be Boise State because I think this team, looking at it right now, we're looking at the future of the program because of the young talent that they've got at the forefront of their roster. But I'm curious if you feel the same way about Boise State.
I mean, Boise is really the only true possibility from the mountain. I mean, maybe Fresno. Do you believe in Mikey Keene? But Boise is really the only
Kind
one
of.
if they get back to. I mean, it looks like they're putting that talent that they had, that clear talent advantage they had over the rest of the league. They're kind of putting that back together. Like I think Wyoming will be solid. I think San Jose State will be solid. I don't think they're like 11-1, 12-0 type solid.
Yeah, I think Boise State to me is the clear front runner because they are a complete team. There are still some question marks because there is a lot of youth that's starting week one. Jonte probably won't be Ashton Jonte at running back probably won't be the week one starter because they got George Halani who's been in college for a decade and a half, it feels like. But Jonte to me brings just this pop that I think that offense really needed and thrived when he was in the backfield last year. I think it was the Frisco Bowl last year that they were in against North Texas. He was outstanding in that game. So I think the future of the offense is really, really bright. You mentioned Fresno State. I think that the offense has pieces to be really good, but I don't think it can match what they did last year because they had so many talented guys at every position, and now they lose guys at every position. Mikey Keene at quarterback is promising. He has experience, but I don't think he's been, from my knowledge, I don't think he's been an entire season starter. I think he's been kind of more
No,
of a spot starter.
right.
So the run game is going to be new. The receivers are going to be new. Eric Brooks is really one of the only guys that sticks around from the last couple of years. Um, and then defensively, they lose a big guy in David Peralez up front. So I'm curious about the defensive line if that can maintain its momentum from last year. But in the back end, I think they have one of the better secondaries in the conference. So I think that part will short up in a really talented Mountain West offensive landscape. But offensively, I just think there's too many question marks. I'm not sure they're
Yeah.
there yet. And they got some tough non-conference games, Purdue and Arizona State, I believe. So those will be pretty tough for them.
Purdue and Arizona State. Those are just two Power Five teams. Those aren't necessarily like tough Power Five teams.
Well,
I mean,
no, but they're both on
they're
the
not
road.
like Vanderbilt and Northwestern, but they're still they are Power
No,
Five. So I guess they're tough in that regard.
yeah,
Purdue, I think, takes
I'm
a major step back this year, and Arizona State is a 50 man roster turnover team. Could be a flash in the pan. Could be 2-10. I don't know.
It could be. I'm very high on the ASU team this year. I'm
Okay.
probably higher on Purdue than most people are. So, those are going to be tough in my mind, but maybe they run in there both on the road and surprise some people. That's just what Jeff Tedford teams do.
Yeah. I'm
They
I'm
go in
selling
there
my
and surprise people.
2023 Purdue shares. I'm selling. I have divested. Yeah. I'm not believing in that team. I believe in Walters. I think they might be good down the road. I think it's a crazy transition. Well, this is a G5.
Yeah, what are we
It's a
doing?
G5 preview. What are we doing talking about Purdue?
But you mentioned San Jose State. I'm not quite there yet with San Jose State.
No.
I think offensively they're stacked, but defensively I'm a little bit curious because they lose some big pieces. But San Diego State is one I wouldn't sleep on for one reason that they haven't really had for a while, is that they have, in my mind, they have a question answered at the quarterback position, which they have by far not had in the last couple of years. Jalen Maiden is naturally a quarterback. I know the story was that he transitioned from safety last year, but he was a quarterback in high school, started as a quarterback in college, I believe. And he took that offense to places it had not been in a while when he stepped in last year. There was kind of excitement, there was, flash, there was downfield stuff they just have not had in the last couple of years. And I think if he keeps that momentum going and they still run the ball as efficiently as they do, the defense will be good. That defense is always good in San Diego. But if the offense can be as good as it was late last year, I think they are a sneaky pick to win the Mountain West. And I don't know about Group of Five, New Year's Six bid. I don't know if they're that good, but I think they could surprise some people and maybe kick, a Boise State or a Fresno State out of that contention. But
Yeah, for
Boise
sure.
State to
And
me,
then there's one other contender we haven't talked about yet. Maybe
Air
the third
Force.
best team in this league. I love my academy football. I think the
Yeah.
Falcons are going to be pretty strong this year. I do worry about replacing two program legends there and Brad Roberts, a fullback, and Zeke Daniels. I mean, that was 3 years of star level play. Those are two of the most productive players in that school history, and they're both gone. But that defense returns a ton of guys. And that backfield, like you were talking about with Fresno, it's gonna be a really, really great defensive backfield. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the rule changes about the academy. We know Army's going to a shotgun look with passing. They're going to pass the ball in Army. We know Navy switching up to some shotgun based triple option. Troy Calhoun has not really hinted that he's going to be doing much of anything different. So he is switching back up. It's not going to be fullbacks and tailbacks anymore. Slot backs and fullbacks, A backs, B backs, but
Superbacks.
super backs is that what it is? Everybody's just a super
Yeah.
back. So John Lee Eldridge is a real explosive player, but if they can utilize him in ways, they can find a way to get on the ball because that perimeter run game is shriveling up in the flex bone scheme. But I mean, Calhoun always did a lot of the zone stuff. He was on the Shanahan staffs there in Denver. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Air Force, then they have an easy schedule again. I think they could sweep the academy games again. I think they could run through that schedule. I don't know if an academy would get that love if they went 11-1. So
And they go to Boise State to close the year, which could be a massive, massive game. And not only the
yeah,
Mountain West, title, conversation, but the group of five, New Year's Six, if, for whatever reason, the American tanks, if
sure.
the Sunbelt teams kind of battle each other out,
And
that
that's a
could,
game that could be repeated, right?
that
Because
is
it's
true.
just the top two teams.
Absolutely.
You could run it. You could play. You can run it back the next week. That'd be fun. Because Air Force
Yeah,
feels like they owe Boise one from last year. That was a
absolutely.
winnable game last year for the Falcons.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was a low scoring game for
Yeah,
Boise State standards. But I agree with you, and I'm optimistic about the backfield situation there with Eldridge. He flashed a little bit last year, so I'm confident in that. I know Brad Roberts was like the leading FCS or FBS rusher last year, so that's inevitably harder to replace, and they lose some guys on the offensive line as well. But the thing that I love the most and respect the most about Air Force is just consistency. They're always consistent with, not just
yeah,
win and loss records and production, but the coaching staff has been there for a while. I know the defensive coordinator switched out last year, but Calhoun's I think 17th, 18th year. Mike
right.
Thiessen, the offensive coordinator, has been there for a decade and a half around there. So huge respect for being able to do that in this day and age in college football. So I have a lot of faith in Air Force as well.
Yeah, and there's two teams, two programs that have been Joe Moore finalists, best offensive line in the country the last 2 years. You know who they are, right?
Them in
Michigan
Michigan.
and Air Force. And you know that
Yeah.
because you edit me. That's why you know that.
And I wrote the Michigan preview in the magazine, so I know
That's true.
that
That's
part.
true.
But they've also won it both years. So
That's true. That's
yeah,
true too.
yeah,
Yeah.
headlines that
Air
way. But
Force, they'll run the ball. The question is, will they be able to run the ball against the good teams? Because that was the thing that got them in trouble last year. Obviously, they ran the ball over Baylor, but I think they were kind of mailing in that game. I don't think the Baylor defensive players really wanted to be playing in that game in 15-degree
no,
weather in their arch rival stadium against a triple option team. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. But they really they struggle to move the ball against some of those better fronts in the league, and it'll be see what kind of wrinkles they have to get that ground game going against a Boise defense against a Wyoming defense. So.
I think 15 degrees for that game is generous. I think I think it was a bit colder than that. But
that was about how many
yeah,
yards per carry Brad Roberts had, though. 15.
yeah, that game was fun to watch. But yeah, I think if I were to list them, I'd go Boise State, Air Force, then probably Fresno State, maybe toss up between them and San Diego State. But to me, I'm pretty firm in my belief that Boise State would be the team to beat
Yeah,
in the Mountain West and to get there in the group of five. And it feels like it's time. It feels like it's been a couple years since they've been in the national limelight. Bring Boise State back. It'd be fun to see them back. On the national stage again and making headlines as they should. It feels like that's their place in college football.
definitely. And if you agree with that, with Dylan's strong take that it's Boise or bust out there in the Mountain West, then you can go and sign up with our partner, MyBookie, and you can wager on that Boise State is going to win the Mountain West Conference. What are the odds on that, Dylan? You got that pulled up? But you can use our code. We don't have a code, but you can click through the link. It's going to be pinned in the comments here on our YouTube. Make a deposit there, MyBookie, and bet on all kinds of good college football things, other things as well. Just 21 plus, of course, for gambling. Please be of legal age to gamble. Gamble responsibly, like betting on Boise. That's pretty responsible.
Yep. Plus 148 on the Boise bet there to win the conference. Next would be Fresno at 360. So pretty comfortable for Boise there in the front.
Yeah. How about the Falcons?
How about the Falcons? 400. So a little bit behind Fresno State. So that's not where I'd personally have them.
I'll put 5 on it.
Yeah, there you go. Don't sleep on UNLV. Not for a group of 5, New Year's 6 contention. I don't think they're there yet, but don't sleep on UNLV to kick some teams out potentially.
Go offense in the desert.
Absolutely. Tons of fun, man. Go check out our Doug Brumfield interview. That guy's the man. All right. The MAC. The MAC is the one team that I think they've only had, is it one New Year's 6 team?
Yeah, they rode the
Michigan
boat.
a number of years ago.
Western Michigan and oh my God, what was that receiver's name? Corey Davis.
That's right. That was
rode the boat all the way into the
16
the New Year's 6 and into a top 10 draft pick. So yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. So it feels like it's time for the MAC to, make some noise and kind of, ruffle some feathers. But like, hey, they're stealing spots from the American and the Sun Belt, and wouldn't that be fun? I think that'd be a lot of fun to see a MAC team back there. But do you think any team has a chance out there?
No. So that was a little too flat, wasn't it?
Tell me how you really
a lot
feel.
Of fun. I'm gonna really enjoy the games in November on Tuesday, Wednesday. Ohio's a lot of fun to watch. Toledo obviously usually has a ton of talent. Daquan Finn is back, but I don't think, even if these teams do go 11-1, 12-0, I'm not sure. I mean, 12-0 would be something, but I'm not sure they're going to get the recognition based on some of the other strength and the other star power that you have at quarterback around the group of 5. Curtis Rourke, of course, a Maple Missile, Daquan Finn. These are really good players, but if a Frank Harris and Austin Reed and Grayson McCall leads, a 10-2, 11-1 season, they're gonna be getting the storylines from mid-October on in the group of 5. So, those guys are fun to watch, but they're not known. I'm not even. I mean, who is Frank Harris even that? No, we know
he should
him.
Be. He's on the cover of our magazine.
I know we know him, but does the ESPN crowd know him? Hopefully
they should. They will. They will.
They definitely don't know Curtis Rourke yet.
Not yet, but they should, and they will. Yeah, I'm almost kind of glad that Liam's not on here, because we'd spend the rest of the episode.
He'd yell at me for 20 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. We'd be on the rest of the episode talking about Ohio alone. So I think I wouldn't do my due diligence with the brand and how we represent ourselves to not talk about Ohio and, their chances. I know it has been a long, long time since they've won the conference. I think this is their as good of a chance as they've had in however many years it's been, 53 years, I believe. Since they've won the MAC or whatever conference they've been in for that span of time. But the offense that they have is outstanding. They were an outstanding team last year, but the receivers that they got are outstanding. The running backs are incredible. I love with the weird name. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, so somebody's gonna get mad at me for not trying, but it's Bangura, the last name. So you guys can get mad at me. And obviously Curtis Rourke at quarterback. The defense, the passing defense, like we talked about Coastal, the back end of the defense was brutal last year. I think they were bottom 10, maybe even bottom 5 in the country last year in pass defense. And so that absolutely has to improve. Obviously, you're not tuning in for that Jimmy Neutron moment, but Ohio to me and Toledo, I think those two teams are the teams to beat, because Toledo obviously reigning champion. At Illinois is how Toledo starts. So I'm very curious to see if they can go in there in Champaign and pull off an upset. They won't be favored to do so, but I would put that bet on Toledo to beat Illinois. Illinois I'm not high on. this year. I know they got a really stacked defense, but I think Toledo could walk in there and pull off an upset.
That'd be fun. Toledo, I mean, they have the best talent in the conference every year, it seems like, and they just go 9-3 with it.
Yeah.
Like Candle, I don't know. I watch, a couple Toledo games a year, and I'm like, is this guy managing this game well? Um, I don't know. A couple years ago he had some buzz for some Power 5 jobs, getting that promotion, and it didn't he didn't really turn that corner and get that promotion, and now people are kind of taking a longer look of what is he actually doing with that talent, and it doesn't always look great. I think Toledo's a great shot to go 9-3 and win that league. Are they a great shot to go 12-0 and play on January 1st? That I'm a little dicier on.
Yeah, and the MAC itself is just a hard. I mean, you could say this with most conferences, but the MAC especially, more than any conference in the country, I would argue, is the hardest to predict because those weekday games are just mad in the best way possible. And so it's hard to see a team going undefeated in conference play. I mean, even Toledo lost 3 games last year. And so it's really hard to see a team really running the table and getting the respect nationally, getting ranked, and being in that conversation for the group of 5. So I think if any team is going to do it, I think it's Toledo, or Ohio. Miami, Ohio, I like as well, the Red Hawks. Um, I don't know. To me, Ohio is the team to beat, and that might be kind of crazy because Toledo is the reigning champ, and they've got a lot of talent returning. But I think the team with the highest ceiling is Ohio, and if their defense can improve a little, and I think they have some guys, Torrey Cox Jr., Justin Burchett, in the back end there. I think they have the pieces to make a significant improvement there. But I'm curious about the non-conference. It is tough at San Diego State to start. They get Long Island, so sorry to our friend Dave that works at LIU, but that's a
Go
little bit of
Sharks.
a break. Yeah, and the Sharks, I love that. LIU there, and then they go at Florida Atlantic, which I like FAU a little bit this year, and then they host Iowa State, which is a really interesting one. Um, so I'm curious if Ohio can pull off a couple wins there. So jumping into Conference USA now, I think there is probably one obvious answer, kind of like the Mountain West, and maybe a couple snaky contenders. But I think Western Kentucky, in terms of odds and a lot of media attention, I think Western Kentucky's got it in kind of the new look Conference USA with only 9 teams.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really see a New Year's Six contender in this league. I think Western Kentucky has a nice little team. Again, I think they're probably going to go like 9-3. The weird and gross thought is that in a couple years it might be Liberty running wild over this league with the Chadwell offense with the resources they have, but still working on building that roster. So watch out 2024, 2025. But yeah, it's Western Kentucky or bust, I think.
Yeah, and there's a 2-week kind of stretch that I think will really determine if they're built for that. And it's in mid-September. They go at Ohio State and then at Troy back-to-back weeks. So that'll be really interesting to see if Western Kentucky, they could run the Conference USA all they want. But if they don't take, I would say, one of those 2 games, then I don't think they've got a shot at the group of 5.
One
the
of
New Year's
one.
Six
They're
bid.
not. They're not beating.
Well,
they're not
yeah,
going to
they're
beat
not.
Ohio State.
Yeah, no.
But I mean, they could get pantsed in that game and still be, if they run the table elsewhere. So
Sure.
that doesn't feel very high leverage to me. But the Troy game absolutely is. That was a really, really close game last year. That was the game where Jared Deggy came off the bench. Remember, he had been in the Western Kentucky camp
That's right.
in spring and summer ball, and then realized he was losing the job to Austin Reed and went to his third school in a year over to Troy. Was competing in that game. No, he came in off the bench in that game. Western Kentucky probably should have won that game at home. So that'll definitely be an interesting one.
Absolutely. I think beyond that, there's too much newness. I think there's only a couple of bowl contenders, and then Middle Tennessee, I think, is the sneakiest team in there. That's a really good defense. Offensively, got some pieces to replace, but I think that would be the only other team worth mentioning in the New Year's Six conversation in my mind. Liberty, maybe. I guess we'll see how they do in the true FBS conference, status, but To me, I think it's Western Kentucky's to run. But those Tuesday, Wednesday games that they'll have, I think it's end of September, early October. That's going to be interesting. A lot of fun to watch. So
Yeah, that's
um,
fun.
now we go to the American, the team that's kind of run the New Year's Six Group of Five bid for the last number of years, but it is a new look conference. So, do you think any of those new teams can jump in and maybe steal that bid?
Yeah, I think UTSA absolutely could. I mean, Trailer's been building something special there for years. They're strong on both sides of the ball. They're strong in the trenches. They got playmakers. Even with Sakari Franklin gone, Cephas is back. They're gonna be really good on offense again. And they create some havoc on defense. So give themselves advantages. And Tulane and Troy to me are kind of like fallback candidates. I see them as having outperformed expectations last year and not having like uncracked some new level, and that they're just going to stay at that level. And I wouldn't be surprised if either of them fall back and see their conference titles this year. And I think UTSA is going to be a prime challenger there in the American. And I mean, maybe they are getting the attention, but I do think that making that I almost said playoff, making the New Year's Six as a G5 does require kind of a multi, years step of promise, of attention. Really Fritz obviously had that terrible 2021, but they almost beat Oklahoma. Like they were building something there with Fritz for a couple years, and then they had that really bad dip and then broke through last year in 2022 and made the Cotton Bowl. But you have to have a couple years of track record, and so maybe UTSA is showing it.
I almost wonder what Tulane did last year alone is enough because in my mind, I think they're a top 25 preseason team. I think they'll be there. So maybe that's enough to give them kind of that edge because it's hard for a lot of Group of Five New Year's Six teams to really get in there, like you said at the top of the podcast, unless they have some sort of preseason hype. Because if they don't really have it early on, then they're not going to be paying attention late in the season unless they're, pulling off upsets, unless they're undefeated, that sort of thing. Or somebody like Austin Reed's putting up ungodly numbers.
Right. I mean, I think that hurt Troy last year. They had absolutely no hype in Summerall's first year, coming off, those 5 and 7 seasons every year under Chip Lindsley, and they were getting no interest, no buzz at all, complete buzzless team. It took till mid-October to people realize what was going on with that defense.
Yeah. So to me, I think UTSA, it might be a new conference, but a new offensive coordinator. I really, really like the UTSA team head to toe.
Yep.
Like you said, Joshua Cephas, I like Kavorian Barnes at running back, but they probably won't
yeah.
be heavy on running the ball. DeCorian Clark as well, Oscar Cardenas at tight end. A lot of pieces on defense as well. Our guy Rashad Wisdom, shout out to the Wisdom family. I think they can win the championship in the conference in their first year. I think they're the only team that I could say that entering a new conference this year. And then Tulane, I think I kind of disagree a little bit about your point that they overachieved and maybe they'll see the conference championship. I think they'll still be probably a 10-win team this year.
Okay.
But I don't see them taking more steps to get to that level again because obviously they were the New Year's Six team last year. I don't know if the team is as good on paper because losing Tajay Spears is a big
Yeah.
loss. So Michael Pratt will have to see more.
High level playmaker. He was a guy that should have been playing Power 5 ball. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll have to see more of Michael Pratt. He had a really solid year last year, took great care of the ball. Completion percentage probably wasn't where he wanted to see in that 63.5 range. Not a ton of yards, like just cracked 3,000, but he's got a really good offensive line. Some pieces in the receiving core, and not something that I would go crazy about. The defense should be good. It was a really top 40, I think, defense last year. So I like them as the top two contenders, with UTSA being the other one. Memphis is a sleeper, though. I think Memphis, they've been kind of on the fringe for the last couple of years with Ryan Silverfield, and I think a lot of people are waiting for them to get back to what they were under Mike Norvell. I like what they did in the transfer portal. I like what they did, adding some weapons. So I think offensively, Seth Hennigan at quarterback is going to have more pieces to work with than he's had in the last couple of years. So
this is year 3 for Hennigan, right? Year 3?
Yes, for Hennigan, yeah. and he's had two really solid years as
Yeah,
the starter. He started
yeah.
early, and he's had two really good years.
He's got a
So
little bit
and
of a Clayton Tune vibe to me, where it's like, maybe other G5 guys are getting the Grayson McCalls and the Harrises are getting, and Pratt now too are getting like that love for that level, but just
yeah,
really consistently one of the best quarterbacks at that level for 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden you look up and he's you know moving on with 10,000 career yards, and it's like, oh yeah, shit.
yeah, he's only I think he's only like 3,000 yards away from reaching that 10,000 yard
Hmm.
milestone, which only a couple quarterbacks in Memphis history have probably ever done that. I think most of them have probably been in the last couple years because of the offenses that they've had. But yeah, I think he's the third, if I'm not mistaken, the third to do it. And he's
Oh, wow.
like you said, third year. So, the kid's only getting better. The
Yeah.
weapons around him are getting better. I like Memphis to be a sleeper team. Won 7 games last year. It felt like nobody paid attention to them because there wasn't really anything there. A lot of close games last year, but I think they could take a step this year. I don't know about the Tulane UTSA tier just yet, but I think they could maybe pull off an upset and kind of shake things up a little bit. But the end of the year, Tulane UTSA game, that might decide it right there. The New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah. I think all three of those teams have a chance to, that if they did run the table or come real close to it, would get the recognition for that bid. Because a lot of this is about, is the team good enough? Is the team going to win the games? But then also, are they going, because it's a lot of politicking involved, right? Who's
Mm-hmm.
going to actually get the nod? And I think all three of those teams would get the nod if they put the resume together.
What about SMU? Does SMU strike you as a team that could maybe explode this year?
I don't know. For me, a jury's still a little out for me on Rhett Lashley. He's coordinated some pretty good offenses, but still want to see that kind of results. Maybe there's a little Major Applewhite vibes for me, where it's like, pretty good, but I need to see some great seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I know Preston Stone taking over their quarterback. They're really well positioned in NIL. Like, I would buy stock in SMU as a program in the new look AAC.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure I'm buying 2024. All right, what year is it? 2023. Not sure I'm buying 2023 stock in SMU. Not. It's a wait and see team for me. I could see it if it happens. It wouldn't be that surprising. They're well positioned, but I'm not going out on the limb. I'm not staking a claim that it will be. Other smart people are. So
For sure. And to me, I think it all comes down to Preston Stone, and that kid is crazy, crazy talented. It's just a
yeah,
matter of can they overcome the loss of not only Rashee Rice, who had
yeah,
huge, humongous numbers the last couple years, but I honestly thought Dylan Goffney, if he would have stayed, he would have been that wide receiver one and would have stepped in because he popped off when he got the chance last year as well. But now he's off to Colorado State. And so Jordan Curley is kind of the number one guy. And I don't know if there's a ton of depth there at wide receiver, but they killed it in the transfer portal with a lot of new guys. So
yeah.
it's a very new team. I'm curious to see if they might be able to pull off a couple of upsets. I think looking at the schedule, they got at TCU and at Oklahoma, so that might figure it out right there if they get that spot. But they don't get
That's
Tulane
tough.
or UTSA, so that is one thing to keep in mind. They do go at
Okay.
Memphis, but other than that, it looks doable for them if they put it all together.
Yeah. Stone, I mean, he was pushing Mordecai last year. So
Yeah.
Tanner Mordecai, erstwhile quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see if he lives up to that potential that they've been buzzing in Dallas now for 12 months, 15 longer years about this kid. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Is that pretty much all we want to say about the AAC?
Yeah, I mean ECU is a fun little program, but I don't see
They
that this
lost so
year.
much.
They lost too much. They're rebuilding there. JT Daniels and
FAU?
Rice. Eh? Ooh, FAU. No, not 12
FAU is
games.
kind
Not
of a
not
fun
not
one.
near six. They're fun. Tom Herman's like just a really damn good ball coach. Maybe not a great
Yeah.
politician, which you need in Austin, but he's just a really good ball coach, and they have a insane amount of returning talent. Like their returning production is top 5 in the country. So I like Casey Thompson. Could be fun. But I'm not saying New Year's 6 good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've pretty much kind of run home our point about the American. To me, I think if we were to put together maybe our top three teams collectively outside of,
Okay.
conference by conference, who would you put in order?
In order, I would say Boise State, just because like I've made the point a couple times about politicking and being that brand. Boise State, I really I think it's South Alabama's year. I just feel good
Uh,
things. They have a chance for a Power Five win, a respectable Power Five win to start the year, and I'll go UTSA third.
Right on. I will go two of the three teams. I will actually go UTSA first. I think
Okay.
they've gotten kind of the media attention that maybe they deserved, a couple years prior. Got into the college football playoff top 25 last year. I think nationally, a lot of people have woken up about what UTSA is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the year to do it. Obviously, a very veteran team. So I like them. Boise State, I put below them for the reason that there is still a lot of youth on that team. So that's still kind of a buy in and invest and see sort of thing.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think, like you said, they've got the agenda kind of going for them because they've got the history, the prestige. People they'll have eyes on them for sure. So I think I put them number two. And then I will go Coastal number three. I think
Ooh.
this is also kind of an investment for me, but I think offensively they can do enough damage to, you know, compensate for a probably, like you said, generous defense. Um, but to me, I think they're the team that I feel the best about. It's kind of a gut feeling for Coastal. I think on paper, South Alabama looks better, Troy looks better. I think you could even argue that a South Alabama or a Marshall might look better.
Mm-hmm.
But Coastal, to me, the offense just seems like it's going to explode, like
Yeah.
to another level explode. Um, so I think if I had to go like right below them, I'd probably put Western Kentucky. But um, I think Coastal is probably my gut feeling pick that I would make a bet on.
Okay. I
So
like it.
feel pretty good. So buy in on those bets for sure. See if we're blowing hot gas here, or if we're onto something. Let us know in the comments. You can definitely check out more of our in-depth previews on each team in our college football preview guide, which is available on basically anywhere you can find our content. You can check it out on our pinned tweet on Twitter. Our website has a link as well. On the top bar, you'll see a link to preview guide. It'll be up there as well. If you're not sold on the magazine just yet, we do have a free sample that we just put out last week. 22 pages. You'll get a little bit of everything that we offer in the magazine. So go ahead and check that out. It's for free. You can check it out, download it, let us know what you think. And then if you're ready to make the magazine, it's $9.99, 370 pages if you include the covers. A lot of fun stuff in there. So go ahead and check that out. So thank you everybody so much for tuning in. We will see you in the next episode next Wednesday.